sta funzionando, secondo me.
Sì,
Quindi
penso di sì.
pensavo di creare una lista di, non lo so, cose di cui parlare, ma non l'ho fatta.
Ah,
Eh,
no? Ah, ok.
ma in realtà eh, possiamo parlare in italiano, un po' in inglese, forse, perché è sempre un po' più veloce, è un po' più
Sì.
facile e veloce. Ma italiano ci sta. Ehm, il mio, diciamo, desiderio per quanto riguarda la mia abilità di parlare in italiano, sarebbe quello di fare questo suono in generale
Mhm.
che è ossia un po' più italianizzato in
Sì.
qualche modo. È un po' difficile da spiegare.
No, no, ho
Credo
capito, nel senso vuoi
che
avere un suono generale un po' più da madrelingua,
sì,
anche
esatto.
se magari non è un accento specifico, ma
Sì,
semplicemente un po'
esatto.
più, un accento un po' più italiano, un po' più da
Sì,
madrelingua italiana.
sì, sì, perché un accento specifico non mi importa, ma non lo so. And I'll switch into a little bit of English. It's
Yeah.
slightly easier than, but it is, I do like talking to you in Italian. It's fun. Um, it's like, okay, actually, I'll just say it in Italian. Quando si vede una persona,
Mhm,
diciamo una persona italiana, questa persona inizia a parlare, subito esce una parola e subito è ovvio che è italiano, che è
mm,
italiana. Subito, dalla prima parola,
mhm.
dal primo suono che esce dalla bocca. E quindi è la mia sfida, è raggiunto
Sì.
quel livello. It's like there's an overall, I don't know what it
Sound,
is. Yeah, it's like, I don't know if
quality of the voice.
it's a quality. It's like a mouth posture. It's and sometimes it seems like I'll watch a lot of Italian people like, well, they're all talking really more nasally, and it's like, but that's not it because some of them don't. Um, it's just this overall thing, and it's not specific to like, oh, you have to do raddoppiamento fonosintatico, and you have to do
Yeah.
this, you have to do that. Like all those things
Those
help.
are details.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, raddoppiamento fonosintattico is dizione. Now, Southern Italians do it, like center south. So I don't know where it starts, but definitely in Rome they do it. Rome and under Rome, like south of Rome, they do it. But in the accent I have, I don't do it naturally usually. Like center north, they don't do it. So that's a detail that gets you just to have more of like proper dizione. But it
mhm.
has nothing to do with sounding Italian because I might sound Italian, but I don't have raddoppiamento fonosintattico.
Sì, però
So
perché
I get
in
what you mean.
realtà l'edizione non c'entra in generale, come sai,
Sì,
con suonare italiano, diciamo.
sì.
Quindi che ne pensi? Hai qualche idea, qualche
Sì,
pensiero in
sì, tante
merito?
idee. Okay, let's explain this in English because I need to get a little bit technical here.
Yes.
So, one of the things that helps the most with learning another language is understanding your own language. And not just understanding the language, but understanding what you specifically do with your tongue, your lips, your mouth in general. Because when you understand what you're doing, it helps you to understand what you actually have to change.
Mhm.
So, something that really helps is kind of sitting, what's the word? Taking a little step back and thinking, okay, what am I actually doing in English? Like, what makes us sound North American or British or Australian or whatever? Like, what is it that gives us that kind of American sound, for example? And what really gives us that American sound is that quality of openness, that quality of round sounds, partially due to the fact that we make very gradual movements. Gradual, right?
Mhm.
Gradual. It's not
Mhm.
gradual, it's gradual, right? So we make slow movements. We have a lot of diphthongs. Ow, a, I, e. And so what that means is our tongue and our lips and everything is used to moving very slowly and very gently. And in Italian, it's the opposite. So if you can recognize that that's what we're doing in English, we can be like, okay, we can't do the slow gradual thing. We have to do the quick thing. So the example I always like to give is the word sound. Sound. If you slow
Sound.
it down, you can do a million sounds. But with paura,
Paura.
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 You're not going to go paura. You're going
See,
to go
stop.
paura,
Right,
right?
right.
So that's one thing. Quick movements in Italian and slow gradual movements in English. Now, the other thing that's really important is the way that we use our tongue in English. And the middle, so if this is, imagine I always use my hand as my tongue figurine. So this is the back of the tongue, this is the middle, and this is the blade. This is called the blade, and this is the tip. Most of the work is done by the middle of the tongue in English.
Mm.
Okay. So if you say like, yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the
yeah,
middle of your tongue going up. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Not the back, not the tip,
yeah,
the
yeah.
middle. That's the muscle we're using. If you say, ah, yeah, ah, yeah, ah, yeah, all of a
I,
sudden the back of our tongue is engaged.
yeah.
Ah,
Okay.
yeah, or it should be. Okay. So, with what you were saying earlier about that nasal quality, which isn't your imagination. And yes, some people sound more nasal than others in any language, even in English. Some people have more nasally voices in English, some
Mm.
people have more nasal voices in Italian, but it's still a general quality because just because there are some speakers of American English that sound nasal, that doesn't mean that American English as a whole isn't a language or variety of English that is characterized by those open round sounds. That's still the most defining feature when you hear English. What's the first thing you hear? Openness and roundness and smoothness. Whereas when you hear Italian, you hear that tension, that precision. It's like a sniper, super laser precise, and
Mhm.
that nasality. And so part of where that nasality is coming from is because the back of the tongue is so engaged
So I'm not
in the
making
long
up
vowel.
this sense I have
No.
that there's more of a nasality.
There is more
You're,
nasality. The
okay.
reason it's more nasal is because let's think about what a nasal sound is. And like obvious sounds are the N and the M because sound is completely blocked off with the lips. And so all the sound is forced to come out through the nose. And the same thing for the N.
Right.
I'm completely blocking any sort of any air from coming out, but with my tongue. And so all of the sound is coming through the nose or ing, like the NG. Same idea, but that's happening in the back. Okay. And so because we're using the middle of our tongue to create all of our sounds, not all of them, but most of our sounds, that's what gives it that open quality because the back here is quite open in American English. Whereas in Italian, it's not that open. We're using the back of our tongue, we're lifting the back of the tongue with our vowels. So like ah, like what separates and ah, ah, back of the tongue lifts.
Ah,
What separates ya and yeah, yeah,
yeah,
back of the tongue.
yeah. Okay. And
What
I don't know
separates
these things because
E?
I can't tell what my tongue's doing. I can't
Yeah,
necessarily feel what it's doing. You've obviously spent years in this arena, so you know.
yeah.
Um, so this is
But it's
totally
just to tell you
interesting.
that it's not your imagination. Like the
Okay.
difference between the American E, the long E sound, is two things. One part of it is that it's diphthong, there's slight movement. E, E, the tongue moves up a little bit, but it's not just that. It's the fact that we're using the middle of our tongue, whereas the Italian E, 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 all of a sudden we're introducing tension back here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the nasality comes from because if you're blocking more air with your tongue, because the back of your tongue is lifted, you're forcing more air to come out of your nose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what creates that slightly nasal sound. So and
Yeah.
every speaker is different, depending on how much you lift that tongue, that probably contributes to how nasal you sound.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and one of the problems that I had early on with this, that came out when I was doing my lessons with Davide, was I was going way nasal, especially on a word like sono. I was going like sono, sono, because I thought, well, to get that O, I had to really And he's like, well, you sound really nasal when you're saying that. That's weird.
Yeah.
And I still find it challenging to get the correct O sound without a nasal N, you know. And I hear Italians doing it. It's like, okay, that's they're just going like sono, but there's something else there. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's really
So it depends
challenging.
on the vowel too, because you have to consider the fact that like even in English, o, ow, and like you, mostly o and ow, o,
Oh,
ow,
ow.
ah, are super open. The tongue is super far down.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas e, a,
E,
because it has that Y sound at the end, that's where the tongue is lifted. So it's similar in Italian. In Italian, the E and the A and
E,
the E
A,
are all going to have a more lifted tongue. Whereas
mm,
the O and your tongue isn't lifted. So the nasality lives more in these kind of, in those vowels that have the lifted tongue. Whereas the O, you know what I mean? So it's going back and forth between nasal, not nasal, but
mm-hmm.
because a lot of the vowels are nasal, it makes it feel like everything's nasal, but not everything is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. So the key is when you say those specific vowels, the tongue, the back of the tongue ideally needs to be engaged, but it does drop a bit for some other sounds, not as much as American English because we have extremely a dropped jaw and a dropped tongue, so it doesn't go that low, but it's also not super lifted. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
So like sono or sono, depending on where you are in Italy. Sono.
Mm-hmm.
No, it could also be the N. The
So,
N isn't the same in English and Italian. There are slight differences in the consonants as well, because the way that we use our tongue, so that's another thing. Consonants are much softer in English, as in we don't use as much force and as much muscularity. So Emma, Emma, m, m,
mhm.
right?
Mm.
What else? Like the V, very, very, super soft. Vero, the,
Vero. But then they also say like vuota, like
vuota,
un spazio vuoto, like vuoto.
vuoto,
Like the V
vuoto.
just goes away, it becomes like a W. And I hear
It's
that
not
like,
quite a W. It's more that the V doesn't vibrate as much as ours does
yeah, it's
because
like
theirs is more of a
super,
the.
super
It's
reduced.
it's almost treated like a B. Like it doesn't sound like a B, but then in the sense that a B, right? Those
Right.
types of sounds, it's more similar to that because it's more of a the. I'm trying to think of a word. What's a word that has avvertire? Avvertire.
Hmm.
You know how we have two types of double consonants in terms of how you pronounce them. So some double consonants are held. Sounds that can be held are held. So, for example, assolutamente. You can hold an S, so assolutamente. It's not that long, but I'm just demonstrating. Or attuale. Attuale. You can't hold a T, so you get a pause before, right?
See.
So those are the two different types of consonants. With the V, you're not going to go avvertire. It's avvertire,
Mm.
avvertire. So you do a pause. And the reason you do a pause is because the V isn't like held sound in Italian. So that's another thing too, is that the consonants are your tongue is doing more work. There's more pressure, right? So the N, it's not N, it's N,
Hmm.
right? Or the L is also in a different position. But again, that contributes to the nasality because the L in English, la, is hyper relaxed,
Hmm.
far forward, touching the teeth, whereas the Italian L, 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 l,
Right.
look how much air that's blocking
Lato.
off.
Yep. Yep.
Make sense?
Yep. So, but like, there's no, would you agree that there's no overall secret? Like, you couldn't just tell me in a sentence, oh, you need to speak more in the front of your mouth, the back of your mouth, and it was suddenly it would. Or is there something like that that you would say to me? And we can listen to some of my little, registrations, so to speak, my little
Yeah.
recordings, and kind of be like, well, this is what that sounds like to me. And we can do that. That would be helpful. Another thing that I've noticed, which is obvious, is that it's not that it's not that Italians like all speak super fast, of course, because in
Mhm.
English I guess we're speaking quickly too. But they're capable of making all the little consonant sounds very quick. I mean, their tongue and their lips are capable of doing that. And when I try to
Yeah.
do it at that speed, it just breaks down. Like if I try to
Yeah.
speak really quickly, it just becomes sort of muddled. Whereas they're just kind of like going, um, I've been to do, but like every single thing is going,
Yeah.
and it's perfect. And you're like, wow, that's crazy. And then you try to do
Yeah.
it, and it's just me, it's just super difficult. And it's not my goal to speak really fast, but it is helpful to speak a little more quickly because it sounds a little more natural.
For
Um,
sure.
but yeah, so I, is there anything overall that you would say one should do to just get a little more of that sound? And if not, that's totally fine. We can go
No,
into
no.
more
I mean,
specific
I
things.
think it's really the stuff that I already mentioned about the engaging the back of your tongue more.
Okay.
So not just using the middle of your tongue. Of course, that's a little bit more of a technical piece of advice. So not everyone likes that kind of advice because it feels like you have to understand what it feels like to use the back of your tongue, but that just is the reality. And some people just get it naturally. Like to be honest, when I was learning, I didn't know that. I know it now because I'm doing accent coaching. And so I'm more aware of what I do in English and therefore I'm more aware of what I do in Italian. But that's not something that I actually knew. I just kind of naturally, just through imitation, it just kind of happened naturally. But that is one of the things. So lifted tongue in the back on many sounds and more lip movement. Like when I'm speaking in
Mhm.
Italian, my trigger is move your lips, move your lips, move your lips, move your lips. Because even though it doesn't, it's not always visible. When you watch someone speak, it's not super noticeable. I feel it when I speak in Italian that I'm making a lot more effort to move my lips. So
Mhm.
that's definitely a little trigger you can use to get yourself to be able to make those precise sounds. And there's also another reason relating to what you were saying before about the fact that they can pronounce so many sounds and speak quickly. This has a lot to do with the fact that English is stress timed and Italian syllable timed.
Mhm.
Because in English, we're not used to always pronouncing every single little consonant because we like to highlight the important syllables. It's really important. It's really important.
Mhm.
Really, right? So really gets all the energy, and important is a little bit faster, right? A little
Mhm.
bit faster, a little bit faster. So the length of when I said a little bit was as long as the fa part of faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster,
So the
right?
stress time thing, it goes across words in a sentence. It's
Yeah.
what you're
So
saying.
like
Okay.
basically what we do is the length of sorry, the distance between stressed syllables in English is roughly the same. So it's not exactly like that. It's not 100% like that. But if you put a metronome and you pay attention to, I don't know, Rachel and Rebecca went to school. Rachel and Rebecca went to school. Okay. I can't think of a perfect example off the top of my
Mhm.
head, but something like that. Rachel and Rebecca went to school. So the syllables that aren't stressed get more squished. They get less energy, but the distance between those stressed syllables is not obviously exactly, it's not exactly the same distance, but it's roughly the same distance. Whereas with Italian, every syllable lasts roughly the same length. Of course, there's a stressed syllable in each word, but it's not like in English where the most important word in a sentence is going to be lengthened. It's going to be way longer. It's going
Mhm.
to have more energy. It's going to be louder.
Mhm.
Whereas the syllables that we don't stress get softer and shorter, and we often skip certain sounds, right?
So we
And
have
that's the
to speak even across a whole phrase and a sentence in a more Italian way, and not carry those syllables in the same way. We have to be more
exactly. So making
like
sure
the.
that when you say a certain word, that you don't overly lengthen the stressed syllable because the other syllables have to have almost the same length,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
So it's hard to think of an example off the top of my head, but we're gonna look at something and
Yeah, let's
we'll be able to point it
play.
out.
I just have them here on my iPad.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to like upload them and have you be able to access them, but I'll just play a
Oh,
couple
that's
things. I
okay.
just started talking, saying not what I do when I practice is I'll just kind of just say random, stupid, meaningless stuff. And it often has to do with language learning. I'll say kind of similar things a lot. Certain phrases just they come to mind. Like I
Hmm.
don't just think, oh, I don't think to talk about like global warming or something. It's usually something about like la mia voce, gli accenti, and things like that, things that
Yeah.
sort of concern. So I'll just play a couple of these, and then we could listen to them once or twice, and you could tell me what you're hearing, if there's anything that really stands out to you. Because if there's really
Yeah.
obvious stuff, I want to work on those things. Like, and I'll just say a couple of things that Davide taught me. One of them that was really interesting was the way that I made the ch sound, like chi or
Mm.
whatever. Um, and he wasn't seeing me; he was just hearing it. He's like, "Well, when you do that, you're just going ch with your mouth."
Yep.
He's like, and this was 2 years ago, and it's taken me that whole time to sort of internalize this and get the move. And he's like, you do it with a round mouth. He's like, ci sono, faccio, with my la bocca like really round, sort of.
Sticking out,
And it
right?
does make a different
Yeah.
noise. Like at first, I was like, well, that's weird. What is that? But it makes a different sound. So
So that's
things
like
like
actually
that.
exactly what I mean about more exaggerated lip movements. Because
Hmm.
if you look at my side profile, if I say cheers, 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 it's more of an up and down. Like we like moving our lips up and down in English, whereas cero, cero, or
Hmm.
cero, whatever, dizione, but whatever. Ci sono, ch, ci sono, ch, versus cheers, ch, right? Also
Right.
with the u, sound, lips are not coming out. Paura, paura, u, u.
Ooh.
So it's the same thing with the u. Your lips actually have to come out,
Hmm.
not just, it's not paura, paura,
Right.
pau,
And it's
paura.
more noticeable like the slower an Italian is speaking. Like I was watching a video just yesterday, I think, and he just at one point said something. I don't remember what it was, but it was something where he kind of slowed it down and did. It was like non ci credo, but it was really. And I
Non ci
and
credo.
I
Look at
noticed it
the
wasn't non ci
closed O.
credo. It was something else.
Non.
But I remember
Non
thinking
ci
like
credo.
I was thinking like, oh, I can really see his mouth. He's going like, Whereas when an Italian is speaking more naturally, it's there, but it's much more subtle because they're just doing it very quickly. They're still doing it, but when they slow down and they're talking distinctly, you can really see it. All right, so let's
Yeah.
play a couple of these. See what we hear here. Oops. Ciao, come stai? Non l'ho visto mai, cosa così, non l'ho visto mai. Ma soprattutto ciò che volevo fare è fare un po' di pratica con. That one sucks. Hold on. Let me play
I'm
this one.
getting a lot of Veneto intonation. I don't know if you
No, I don't even literally don't even know what that means. Like people
okay.
always they don't say to me this, but I know that it's a very specific accent and it doesn't necessarily some people don't like it or whatever. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. Let me just play a little
Yeah,
bit of this
sure.
one. That was a weird one because I played it back and I was like, I didn't say cho. I said like to. It was really weird the way that cho sounded.
Hmm.
Ciao, come stai? Ciò che volevo fare oggi è semplicemente fare un po' di pratica con la mia abilità di parlare in italiano con una certa scioltezza, con una fluidità un po' più, non lo so, forte, avanzata, per raggiungere quel livello un po' più alto. Da un lato, sarebbe un po' difficile raggiungere quel livello, dall'altro lato, non lo so, può essere possibile.
Possibile.
Possibile. Yeah, and the
Possibile.
way I do the at the end, like the closed e at the end of the words, it's really hard for me to do a closed e at the end of a word. I basically just do
Yeah.
it at more of an open e, like a
Right.
dominant situation.
Because
It's
this is
just
like what I heard. There was another word. Now I forgot what it was earlier on in the recording, but possibile, possibile, instead of possibile,
non lo so, può essere
possibile,
possibile. Possibile,
possibile. See
possibile,
how it's like, yeah, it's kind of open, but it's not quite a schwa, but it's giving me,
possibile.
it's
E.
almost a schwa,
What
right?
and I think about this all the time. And I'm like, okay, I can go but when I'm saying at the end of a word, it's hard. It's like perché. Perché? It just
Perché.
requires so
That
much.
one's important. That one is, I mean, some people say it with an open E, but it's even written in the writing system. Like it has to be a closed E,
But there are
regardless.
people
Yeah,
who say it
I
open, so
know.
it's like,
I know,
and
but it's so bad. It's
but I think it sounds cool. I mean, I don't know. I watch a lot of videos in Italian. A lot of them do it that way, and so
It's like
like
saying
these,
pero instead of però. It's like it's written into the writing system. So there's no, anyway, that's just my opinion. I don't like
yeah,
perché instead of perché because it's written, but that's just my personal opinion. Um,
yeah.
but but the thing that would be good is just for you to have control. So whether you want to use a closed E or an open E, that's totally your choice. But what's ideal is choosing to do it. So it's like if you want to learn another accent, but like having the ability to have your natural accent, but then also speak with a British accent. It doesn't mean you have to speak in like that way all the time, but having the choice to do that is cool, right?
I agree
Because you want to
completely.
feel freedom. Because if you don't have the choice to do, if you can't choose to do a closed E when you want to, it means you don't have freedom and you're not going to feel as comfortable as you could.
Hmm.
So the problem with possibile is it was more like possibile, 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 with kind of a schwa.
Può essere possibile. Possibile.
Possibile,
Possibile.
possibile,
Possibile.
possibile,
Possibile. Possibile.
possibile.
Possibile. Okay, so overall, like the I's, the letter I, did you notice, did it sound like I was missing a lot of something we worked on years ago together?
Yeah,
It was really difficult at the beginning. I feel like now I'm doing it correctly, but it's hard to say
yeah. Let
because
me
I,
hear it again. Let me just
okay.
hear a few
Yeah, you
seconds.
could just focus on whatever you want.
Yeah.
Ciao, stai. Ciò che volevo fare oggi è semplicemente fare un po' di
Oh yeah, that's the word.
pratica con...
Pause. Semplicemente, semplicemente.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That's what I'm talking about with stress timed and syllable timed. Now, it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you can't say things quickly, but every sound has to be there. So you said kind of semplicemente, semplicemente. They were kind of
Hmm.
muddied, right? Instead of semplicemente, right?
Semplicemente. Hmm.
Semplicemente. Now
And
you
that's
don't have to, you can still say it quickly, semplicemente, 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 right? But all the sounds have to be there.
and that's what's hard is when as soon as I get past a certain velocità,
Mhm.
it's it's a lot more difficult to make every sound there. It
Yeah.
becomes
I would
harder and
say
harder.
focus more on evening out your syllables. So try not to. Now, Italians do lengthen certain, not everyone though. I actually don't do that much. It's not really a feature of the my accent. In other words, the accent that I'm imitating. Like my husband doesn't do that. So what I would say, what would actually make it a lot easier would actually be like Italians, some Italians lengthen the end of a word. Pensando. Okay.
Right.
I
And I
don't
love
really
that.
do that.
I try to
And,
do that when I can.
but that's the thing.
Ho
It
pensato.
might actually be making it harder. And the reason it's making it
Mhm.
harder is because you're kind of taking something that feels familiar in English and you're using it to really lengthen that vowel and shorten everything else. But if you shorten everything else, then you're making it harder for yourself. So if you try to make everything a little bit more even,
Hmm.
that might actually help.
Hmm.
Semplicemente, semplicemente. You don't have to do semplicemente.
Okay, let's hear it again. Hold
It's a
on.
little more like English, you know?
Semplicemente. Yeah, I kind of went semplicemente
So
instead of
try it now. Semplicemente.
semplicemente.
Hmm.
Semplicemente. Semplicemente. Yeah, another thing I've started noticing is, like you said, um, a lot of the sounds are very short and clipped. Like, like in Spanish, it's very much that way. The sounds are like boom, 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 boom. They don't have, doppie or anything like that. And everything
Hmm.
is just like this. And I've noticed to a certain extent that's true in Italian too. And it's basically what you're saying is the sounds are, you know, you can't run them together like I did there. Semplicemente. Okay.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you'll never find an Italian um, mumbling a little bit. It's just that it's not the same as English where there are actually rules for what sounds we drop.
Mhm.
So it's not really normal to say, I asked him a question. The rule is actually to say, I asked him a question. I asked him. You skip the K and you skip the H. I asked him a question. That's not laziness. That's actually a rule, right? And so we have a lot of rules like that where you're actually supposed to drop certain sounds. Otherwise, you're just slowing yourself down. And we don't do it in every situation. We do it in natural speech. And if we speak really slowly, we might keep that sound in. I asked if it's, you're stressing the word, okay? But if you say it naturally, I asked him a question. I asked him a question.
Mhm.
So that's the difference is that of course you'll always find speakers that might do that, that might be considered lazy, but you're actually just going to make it harder for yourself because our what we have to do is the opposite. We have to really enunciate because we're not used to enunciating in that way. Because what makes an Italian speaker pleasing to listen to or a good speaker or whatever is how precisely they articulate. So, you know,
Do you think that these things um do those make me sound American? Like just do you listen to that and go, okay, well that's he's American because he went specificamente. Does it
kind
or
of,
does it
yeah. Because
okay.
as I said, it kind of reminds me of how we drop sounds in English.
Okay.
And also the fact that English is stress timed. It's kind of like you're wanting to live in being stress timed. You're wanting to stay
Mhm.
in that universe of a stress timed language as opposed to moving to a syllable timed language, which is why I don't really recommend it as a because you do it, I think like you overdo it because your brain locked onto something that it noticed in some Italian speakers, and it's like the problem is knowing that's something that's okay sometimes, but when it's overdone, it sounds more I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't sound sorry, it doesn't sound very natural. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? It's better to save that for those moments when you're really thinking, because that's a thinking sound. Penso che I don't know. I personally don't do it.
Oh, just elongating.
Yeah, elongating. I would
I have
reduce the elongating.
it's funny that we're talking about this because I've just noticed I don't know this morning or yesterday I was paying attention to some videos. I watch a lot of Italian videos.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, oh, he that guy was just doing exactly what you said. He was like da da da, and he was drawing out some syllables, and it was like a street interview. It was just someone talking normally.
Yeah.
But
Like
yeah, they don't
again,
typically do that. I totally get you.
not
And
everyone does that. And just because not everyone does that, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's just for the purposes of a learner who's trying to sound more Italian. The reason I don't like it is because it's going to encourage you to make it feel more stress timed and to not make all the syllables the same length. And so you're going to be thinking about the last syllable in the word and elongating it. And you might not be stressing the words properly because the stressed syllable in a word is usually the penultimate syllable. Not always, but usually. And so by always lengthening that last syllable, you might not be putting the stress in the right spot. So it might introduce other bad habits. That's the reason I don't like it, not because it's wrong, but specifically because we're talking about a learner of Italian. And so it's okay to do sometimes, but if that's the intonation that you're always using and the rhythm that you're always using, it's I would keep it as something that you sprinkle in when you're really thinking
Mhm.
about what you're about to say, but not using it all the time because you kind of use it on like almost every word. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
that's important. Another thing that's really hard, as you know, from I've seen some of your reels lately about listening to your own voice,
Hmm.
is I listen back to my voice and it's like I can't tell really. Like I know I sound better than I sounded 4 years ago. I can watch
Yeah.
my first video and it's like, okay, that sounds bad and this sounds better. But when you hear this, is there any overall tonality thought that enters your mind as far as, and this is what I'm kind of going back to is this sort of sound, like just if I just say like the word my like to me that sounds very Italian. Like it feels that way. I can picture people saying it like that. My, but I don't know. Like I don't know
my,
if it just sounds really nasal, if it sounds like an American going my, like,
my,
and that's the thing is
my.
just
Yeah.
one word. You know, I just like to be able to do just one word, and it's like, oh, is he Italian? Is he
You
American?
want, yeah, I get what you mean. You want to have okay, so there are some speakers that they always sound 60% there. And then there's some speakers where in some words they sound native, and then in some words they sound it's like off. So what you're saying is that you want to at least have one word sound perfect. Like you want to,
I
that's what you're
wanna
saying, right?
I wanna figure out what the frick it is
Yeah.
that causes that quality. Like if you just took one word out of something that's an Italian said, and it's like, how come it is so hard to reproduce just that single word, like
Yeah.
sbagliato, sbagliato, you know, that's one word, you know.
Yeah.
Does it sound,
Sbagliato.
you know, sbagliato? Does it sound Italian? I don't know. Does it sound more American, more Italian? Like, what could I do? Is it even possible? You know, it's for someone at my age. I think it's extremely difficult. Like the number of people I've seen who are obviously like Italian speaking English without an accent, it's almost impossible. There's like one person, Antonio Parlati. Um,
Oh yeah, I follow
and
him too.
and the
Well, it's not
number of
only him. Davide is pretty close, and I don't even think he practices that much.
Davide is very, very good as well,
Yeah.
obviously. But the number of like Americans who sound perfectly Italian, occasionally we'll see a reel on Instagram and somebody will be talking and they're like, okay, that guy sounds Italian. And then suddenly they'll start speaking English. Like, whoa, he's a native English speaker. And it's
Yeah.
like a lot of times it turns out they grew up in both places or something, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I know it's very silly, and people are going to watch this and be like, "Hey, this is pointless and silly," because it, in reality, my actual dream is just to be able to speak perfectly fluently. The accent, as you know, is in some sense irrelevant. You know, if you go to Italy and speak perfectly fluently and you can understand everyone and say everything you want to say perfectly without thinking about it, that's really the dream. And they're not going to be like, no, he has an American accent. They actually like it. You know, they like it when you have an
Yeah.
American accent. It sounds cool. It's simply that it's fun and interesting and is like a challenge and a thing to do, as you know, to
Yeah.
try to like, what is it? What is it? What is it? How can I just get a little bit better? So
Yeah.
anyway,
I mean, I think that the better your pronunciation is, the more you end up feeling fluid and free. You know,
mhm,
when you feel like things are off, at least that's how I felt. And I love pronunciation, so I might be an outlier, but you just feel more free
mhm,
because those sounds, every language has a kind of family of sounds, and they all work together in a very specific way. Like all the sounds in English sound super round and open. All the sounds in Italian sound super tense and tight and precise. And so the language is built to be that way. You know, it's built around a certain set of sounds. And so it's not that, I mean, everyone can do whatever they want, but for me, like, what I think it makes sense to spend more of an even amount of time on all aspects of a language. So on grammar, on vocabulary, on pronunciation. I personally think they're all important. Um, so, you know, it is possible to make a big improvement. Can I say that, oh, one day you're going to sound like a native speaker? I don't know if it's possible. I think it depends on really how much work you put in. Of course, there are elements of natural talent, but it's really the biggest predictor is practice, guidance and practice, having feedback
mhm.
and practicing frequently throughout the day, not just practicing an hour on the weekend, but practicing 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes a day split up into different sessions. You know, every time you wash your hands, you say sbagliato, 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 and you do it multiple times a day and you train your, but that's the thing, you have to like the technical aspect of it. You have to like playing with your tongue and being like, okay, I have to raise the back of my tongue. What does that feel like? Do you feel like experimenting with that? Do you like it? Do you want to?
And
Because if you
that's
do,
mhm.
then
And that's
I
what I
think it's
do.
yeah.
That's literally what I do. Like
Yeah.
I think it was a couple 2 years ago, maybe three. um, I was listening to a TED talk in Italian, and I noticed I just was listening to how he was speaking, and I noticed that he said the end of the sentence, blah 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 blah, continuato, and I thought that's really interesting. Like every little sound in there, continuato, is Italianized, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I recorded that, and I made a little clip of it, and I trimmed out everything else except for that word.
Hmm.
And still to this day, I will just occasionally just say that or any word with ato at the end because at first it was really difficult to make the T that didn't sound like an American T. To reduce that T down to the Italian T, ato instead of atto or whatever, and
Yeah.
then to get that A that kind of goes up, it's like continuato, and it has a certain sound, and then the O is a different like. And yeah, I will just literally walk around and just say things like that because there's so many words
Yeah.
that end in ato. Um, so yeah, I do like to do that, and I do think it's
Yeah.
fun. And I've also thought
Yeah.
recently, like, without actually living there and being super immersed and spending a lot of time talking to people, just talking and talking and talking and talking, because it's like learning the guitar. I mean, you're literally training these muscles to do something that's extremely difficult and super
Yeah.
precise.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's very difficult from afar. So.
Yeah. But it is possible. It's just, again, there are many factors that go into how close somebody can sound to a native speaker and how long it will take. Again, of course, there's an element of talent. Some people just have a great ear and a great ability to just experiment and make different sounds. That's obvious. That doesn't mean that it's impossible for somebody who isn't naturally like that. It's just that maybe it's going to take a little bit longer.
Mhm.
So it's lots of things. It's talent, it's practice, it's guidance, feedback, listening to yourself.
And,
It's a
and
lot of things. Yeah.
what is your take on the importance of adopting any specific accent versus just doing, Italiano standard or, dizione, and not
So,
worrying about the accent? Like I told you, I was sort of
yeah.
shadowing Marco Montemagno, but not, I didn't really want to reproduce every nuance of what he was saying. It was more just trying to sound more Italian in general. And then I realized he's probably not a good example. He has a very characteristic way of talking.
Hmm.
He uses a lot of kind of slightly, uh, I don't know, weird phrases and words and stuff.
Yeah.
Not weird, but
Well, I think it definitely makes it easier when you pick an accent because whenever an accent is mixed, it send like your brain gets confused, right? When he's here, no, now he's here, oh now he's doing this accent. And my accent was a little bit like that at the beginning because I had friends from all over and I wasn't speaking to anyone specific. Like then when I started talking to my husband more, then my accent started sounding more and more like his. But I think that's part of what makes people feel like I sound Italian because I picked an accent. Of course, it was easy for me. I just picked my husband's accent, so I'm hearing it all the time. But that's part of what helps because, if somebody's learning English and some words are more British and some words are more American, sometimes it sounds like they're saying a different word. And so we
Mhm.
can actually misunderstand them, right? Now that's more of an issue with English than it is with Italian, because in English we have so many words that are so similar to each other. But
You're
it
right.
definitely helps.
Yeah,
It
you're
helps.
right. If you hear someone who's trying to do an American accent. They're doing it pretty well, and then suddenly there's some British sounds in there. It's
Yeah.
like, what is going on? That's weird. And we hear it. Like that's part of it is we're so attuned to it. People will ask me, Italians would be like, "Oh, does this sound American or whatever?" And it's like, No, not at all." But they can't tell.
Yeah.
They think it does
Well,
sound
imagine
American.
someone says someone's speaking with a perfect or whatever. They're trying to sound American and they say coal. Are you like, oh, are you saying call? Are you saying coal, like COAL? You know what
Uh-huh.
I mean? And that's when you run into issues because,
Cool.
you know, or like New Zealand English, Kiwi English is very closed. Their is it becomes a schwa. So like six becomes six, seven becomes seven, seven.
Seven, six, seven.
You know,
Uh-huh.
reference is more like reference, reference,
Reference.
right? So
Yep.
everything
Yep.
is a lot more closed.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is if you talk to a Kiwi, you go for kind of New Zealand English and then you go to American, it's like everything is more closed and it's like, wait, which vowel are you attempting to say? That's the issue. But again, that's more an issue with English and less an issue with Italian. But
So how does one choose an Italian accent? It seems almost random. Like Montemagno is, he's Milanese. I could pick any random person who seems to have kind of a neutral accent. It
yeah,
just seems very arbitrary, and
yeah,
it's always seemed weird to me because like then if you were really doing it really well and you went to Italy, people would be like, "Huh, he sounds a little bit like he's from the north, the south, from wherever."
yeah.
Sort of
I mean,
funny.
my personal recommendation, if you were to ask me, which accent should I learn, I would stick to roughly Central Italy, only because when you go to the south, you get um, voicing of consonants. So C sounds more like G, T sounds more like D, S sounds more like Z,
Mm.
and so on. And for a learner that's just trying to sound more Italian, that I feel like that adds a lot of it makes it more complicated.
Mm.
Also, those are accents that are generally difficult for people to understand. Even some native, it depends where, but even some native speakers of Italian have a hard time understanding certain accents when there's that much change. Again, it depends on who it is, but those accents that really sound heavily influenced by dialects, not ideal for learners, just because they're so different from what you're gonna if you like watching movies or TV shows, unless it's like set in that specific place, it's too different. And I mean, northern accents, I don't know. I just feel like either you should try to follow some sort of actor who speaks. I think that the main thing is speaking clearly, because I would not recommend somebody to learn an accent that, for example, even I have a hard time understanding. Because if I'm at the level I'm at now and I have a hard time understanding certain accents, it's like it means if you're conversing with other people who are also learning, you're complicating things. It's like imagine you want to learn English and you want to learn that really obscure Scottish accent that even we have a hard time understanding.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's not to that degree, but you get what I mean. You'd be like, I don't know if I would recommend that. I would probably recommend general American or received
Right.
pronunciation,
It kind of
right?
makes no sense.
So it's not necessarily about accents being good or bad. It's more like what's practical, right? And what's practical is usually something roughly somewhat close to standard.
Hmm.
Not, you don't need to do raddoppiamento fonosintattico, like that's not necessary, but just roughly somewhat standard.
Hmm.
So, but that's the thing, like even I would recommend an accent that nobody has a hard time understanding, because even in Florence, they don't really pronounce their C's,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And there are lots of people that learn that accent. It's not bad, especially if you live there. But if you're not living there, especially, ideally the point of communication is being understood. So I would recommend not introducing you know, too much changing of consonants. And I have a little bit of that because in my current version of Italian, my S's aren't the same as my S's in English. They're closer to a sh.
Mm.
Um, but I live here, so
Right.
it's different. That's my husband's accent. And I actually wasn't even aware that I started doing that.
Mm.
It just happened naturally. And so now I have to think about it. If I need to say, I don't know, successo, successo, instead of successo, successo. Like I have to think about it, even though it's the same S that I do in English,
Hmm.
right? Um,
And what do you
but
think
even,
about,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but what do you think about speed, the importance of talking faster, versus, and
precision over speed.
yeah, like, because I know that even when you watch whatever, like street interviews with Italians or something, generally the older people, like me, speak slower. And so it seems like it would be more okay to not try to speak more quickly, but to try to speak more precisely. Um,
Yeah.
with thoughts, is it important
Yeah.
in any way to work on speed, or should I spend more time slowing down? Should I spend like the next year just trying to slow down and do every, syllable correctly, and then
Yeah.
the speed comes
Precision over
later?
speed all the way.
Okay.
Especially when you're practicing, you go as slow as you need to sound as clear as you can. And then speed will come after. Because there was a point, especially when I was recording videos several years ago, when I used to be much more anxious as a person, and this is relevant. I was very anxious, and I would, sorry if you can hear my son screaming in the background. Um, but I would always be in such a rush. Even in English, I was just like stavo correndo. I was just like running, 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 rushing, rushing, rushing. And that's not necessarily, sorry, let me just wait for him to stop screaming.
I literally can't hear it.
You can't hear it? Okay,
No,
perfect.
it's not coming through.
Um, I had to remind myself slow down because when I was editing my videos, I was like, oh, I have to cut this out because doesn't sound good because I was rushing and I wasn't thinking about move your lips, like be precise with your speech, and it was worsening my accent because I was rushing. Now, that was something I needed to adopt into my English as well because I was speaking so quickly that it just it's just more pleasant to listen to someone who speaks a little bit more slowly and a little bit more confidently and a little bit more precisely. And
So,
usually people who really know what they're talking about and are um, confident people don't necessarily always speak at the speed of light. A lot of the time, you'll actually see them speaking really slowly and being like, hey, I can take my time here. I can speak slowly. I know you're listening to me. That's what I had to tell myself. Like, okay, speaking slowly will actually make me look more confident,
mhm,
right? That's what I had to tell myself to remind myself, slow down. It's okay. You don't have to rush because my brain was like at a million miles per hour. And now I speak much more. I'm still a fast talker, but I'm not rushing so much that I can't breathe anymore.
mhm.
So
Quindi
anyway,
quando parlo in questo modo, con questa
mhm,
velocità, che ne pensi? Sembra veloce, sembra lento, sembra normale? Che ne pensi?
normali.
Perché questo è un po' per me è un po' lento. Sto
Mhm.
parlando molto più precisamente in modo tale che non sbaglio ogni singola parola, ma che ne pensi? È normale, diciamo?
È leggerissimamente lento,
Mhm.
però non è una cosa negativa.
Ci sta?
L'importante per me è essere preciso, essere chiaro.
Mhm.
La velocità viene dopo.
Mhm.
Quindi, vedi lì l'ho fatto, quindi, però lo faccio ogni tanto, allungare le sillabe, capisci? Non
Quindi
lo faccio
sì.
per ogni parola, più magari faccio una pausa va bene, però
Mhm.
fare troppo quel quando, ogni
Mhm.
tanto, quando veramente stai pensando, capisci?
Sì, esatto.
Quindi sì, è chiaro che stai parlando più lentamente di me. Io parlo molto più veloce, ma anche il mio inglese è così. Anche in inglese parlo velocemente.
Mhm.
Quindi è una cosa che ha più senso perché io sono così anche in inglese. E poi è una cosa che è venuto col tempo. Non è che parlavo questa velocità all'inizio. Adesso parlo veloce, negli ultimi anni parlo veloce.
Mhm.
Prima era molto più difficile avere la stessa precisione, ma parlare velocemente. E poi faccio tante pause anche. Non parlo sempre tutto attaccato. Magari può sembrare così nei video perché i video sono montati e la gente non ascolta se il video non sembra super veloce.
Sì.
Però in realtà quando parlo ci sono delle pause.
Sì, per me quando sto parlando in italiano è
Sì,
come voglio parlare un po' più veloce, un po' più velocemente. Voglio sembrare un po' più italiano
sì.
in questa maniera.
Per esempio, ti fermo. Quando?
Quando?
Sì, perché dici quando, qua, quando, invece di quando, quando. Quindi devi aprire di più sulla A.
Mm.
Quando.
Quando? Quando?
Sì,
La A è davvero difficile.
sì.
Ho lavorato tantissimo con Davide sulla A, perché
Mm.
non esiste in inglese,
Sì.
ha un suono abbastanza diverso che è dopo edizione, ma dopo.
Dopo edizione, dopo
Dopo
è più
mi
comune.
piace
Tipo io dico
dopo.
dopo.
Mi piace dopo, ma dopo
Sì.
ci sta. Ma come si dice? Ci ho messo 2 anni per, non lo so, internalizzare questo suono un po',
Sai
perché
che si dice, oddio, interiorizzare?
interiorizzare.
Non lo so, perché mi
No.
pare internalizzare mi sembra una cosa che direi io, però una cosa inglese.
Sì,
Aspetta.
forse. Ma
Internalize, mi sa che interiorizzare forse.
quindi la A è sempre molto difficile per me.
Interiorizzare, ah, avevo
Interiorizzare.
ragione. Perché io ho fatto questo errore non so quando, ma a un certo punto l'ho fatto. Vedi?
Mm.
Quando. Non
Quando,
quando.
quando. Ah,
Quando. Ma sai cosa ho
quando,
notato?
quando.
Anche il tuo inglese è molto così, perché quando parli in inglese io ho un modo di parlare molto più aperto rispetto a te, in inglese, perché anche il tuo inglese è molto non muovi tantissimo le labbra, non apri
Mhm,
la mascella tanto, capisci? Quindi anche, secondo me è anche questo che non ti aiuta, perché per esempio il mio inglese c'è una grossa differenza tra the schwa and the ah sound, ah, song, apro molto. Invece ho notato che tu apri un po' di meno, quindi forse è anche per questo che è così strano per te, perché hai un modo di parlare ancora più rilassato in inglese, ancora più chiuso,
mhm.
rilassato ma chiuso, e quindi forse quando devi aprire un po' di più in italiano rimane un po' più complicato,
Sì,
capisci?
esatto, perché quando parlo in inglese, credo di farlo in modo, non so come si dice in italiano, meno chiaro, diciamo, like mumbling. A volte è difficile per gli altri, capiscono, tutto quello che sto dicendo in inglese.
Capire quello che
Per
sto
qualche,
dicendo.
sì, sì, per qualche motivo che non so esattamente. Forse è semplicemente che sono pigro quando parlo. Eh, non voglio, sì, non voglio parlare molto chiaramente perché richiede un sacco di forza.
Sì. No, ho
Quindi.
capito, ho capito. Ma questa è una cosa importante perché per capire il motivo per cui fai un po' fatica ad aprire, perché anche io, quando ho fatto la storia di Italo con Davide, sai quante volte ho dovuto, non so quanti anni fa era, 2022 forse, a dire Italo, dicevo Italo, Italo, with a schwa, Italo.
Mm.
Il resto era a posto, ma quella A non ce la faceva ad aprirla, anche adesso sicuramente lo faccio ancora, ogni tanto con la A, che non apro abbastanza. Però è una cosa davvero difficile perché abbiamo questa regola in inglese che abbiamo la schwa ovunque, perché lo stress è sulla I, quindi per il mio cervello nordamericano io dico, ma perché devo aprire questa A? Tanto la sillaba stressata è la prima,
Mhm.
però dobbiamo aprire di più e forse non sarà sempre aperta in modo uguale, però è sicuramente non una schwa, quello è sicuro. Quindi magari può essere a volte un po' più aperto, un po' più chiuso, ma non quanto in inglese, perché in inglese abbiamo veramente un- come si dice? Manco in inglese mi viene, il cervello non sta funzionando, tipo abbiamo dei suoni molto chiusi, molto aperti. Anche l'intonazione in inglese va da un'intonazione, dipende anche dalla persona, ma di solito da note molto alte a note molto basse. E di solito quando finiamo una frase diventa molto basso. Invece, quando c'è la sillaba più accentata, a volte è quello più basso, ma molto spesso è quello più alto. It's so interesting. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Ok? Molto in alto da molto in basso. Non tutti parlano così, però questa è, diciamo, la regola, che c'è una differenza maggiore rispetto all'italiano che rimane un po' più leggerissimamente più piatto.
Mhm.
Quindi praticamente la cosa che devi fare è devi eliminare le cose estreme.
Mhm.
Quindi eliminate the schwa and eliminate the overly openness. You have to live in a place that's somewhat open always.
Mhm.
Capisci?
Mhm.
E questa è la cosa. Quindi pensa un po'
Allora,
a quello. Sì.
sì, sì, tempo scaduto. Eh, Grazie mille per aver parlato con me. È stato molto interessante. Ho
Alla fine non
imparato.
abbiamo fatto una lezione, abbiamo fatto più che altro una conversazione.
Sì,
Però vabbè,
però
se
ci
vuoi...
sta, mi piace fare in
Sì.
questo modo perché è molto più rilassato, molto più divertente farlo.
Sì, sì.
Sì.
Vabbè, tanto se, sai, se vuoi lavorare su suoni... Adesso ti ho dato un sacco di, non lo so, cose a cui pensare che che riguardano, vedi anche io, alla pronuncia. Ehm, Però cerca di pensare a quello che ti ho detto, e cercare di... Si vede che sto parlando veramente poco in italiano ultimamente. Non parlo mai in italiano, sempre in inglese perché insegno in inglese. Vabbè, è un problema. Comunque, non mi ricordo quello che
Sì,
stavo dicendo.
ho un paio di cose su cui devo lavorare, quindi
Lavorare. Hai detto
lavo,
lavorare,
lavo,
lavorare, invece di lavorare.
lavorare. Cosa dicevo?
Hai detto
Ok,
lavorare, invece di
lavoro,
lavorare. So it
lavorare,
seemed like three A's in a row. It seemed
lavoro,
almost like lavorare instead of
lavorare.
lavorare.
Sì, sì, questa è una parola mm, con cui faccio pratica, lavoro,
Mm.
perché come dice Montemagno in questo modo, lavoro, come molto,
Molto,
e
sì,
questo suono
molto.
molto diverso, molto,
Sì.
lavoro,
Ti devo
quindi
correggere su un'altra cosa, la tua
mhm.
D, perché a volte fai la flap T. Quindi
Sì,
invece di vedo, fai
lo
vedo,
so, lo
vedo.
so, lo so,
Sì,
è
sì,
difficile,
lo so.
come in
Modo, sì,
modo,
invece di
invece di
moro, moro,
sì, sì,
moro,
lavorato,
modo.
ho lavorato su questo, sì, grazie mille.
Prego. Va bene.
Quindi ci vediamo presto per l'intervista.
Sembrava questa l'intervista,
No, no,
perché alla
perché non
fine...
abbiamo parlato della tua vita e tutta quella roba lì, perché
Ah, ok.
sono molto curioso di sapere come va, come stai, che fai e tutta quella roba lì. Quindi, boh,
Va bene.
continuiamo.
Certo,
Ok,
va benissimo.
grazie mille.
Prego, ci
Ciao, ciao.
sentiamo.
Ok, ci
Ciao
sentiamo.
ciao.
Ciao.